Beowulf, an Anglo-Saxon epic poem. Translated from the Haines-Socine text by Leslie Hall. The present work is a modest effort to reproduce approximately, in modern measures, the venerable epic, Beowulf. Approximately, I repeat, for a very close reproduction of Anglo-Saxon verse would, to a large extent, be prose to a modern ear. The Haines-Socine text and glossary have been closely followed. Occasionally a deviation has been made, but always for what seemed good and sufficient reason. The translator does not aim to be an editor. Once in a while, however, he has added a conjecture of his own to the emendations quoted from the criticisms of other students of the poem. This work is addressed to two classes of readers. From both of these alike the translator begs sympathy and cooperation. The Anglo-Saxon scholar he hopes to please by adhering faithfully to the original. The student of English literature he aims to interest by giving him, in modern garb, the most ancient epic of our race. This is a bold and venturesome undertaking, and yet there must be some students of the Teutonic past willing to follow even a daring guide, if they may read in modern phrases of the sorrows of Hrothgar, of the prowess of Beowulf, and of the feelings that stirred the hearts of our forefathers in their primeval homes. In order to please the larger class of readers, a regular cadence has been used, a measure which, while retaining the essential characteristics of the original, permits the reader to see ahead of him in reading. Perhaps every Anglo-Saxon scholar has his own theory as to how Beowulf should be translated. Some have given us prose versions of what we believe to be a great poem. Is it any reflection on our honoured Kemble and Arnold to say that their translations fail to show a layman that Beowulf is justly called our first epic? Of those translators who have used verse, several have written, 8 from what would seem a mistaken point of view. Is it proper, for instance, that the grave and solemn speeches of Beowulf and Hrothgar be put in ballad measures, tripping lightly and airily along? Or, again, is it fitting that the rough martial music of Anglo-Saxon verse be interpreted to us in the smooth measures of modern blank verse? Do we hear what has been beautifully called the clanging tread of a warrior in mail? Of all English translations of Beowulf, that of Professor Garnett alone gives any adequate idea of the chief characteristics of this great Teutonic epic. The measure used in the present translation is believed to be as near a reproduction of the original as modern English affords. The cadences closely resemble those used by Browning in some of his most striking poems. The 4 stresses of the Anglo-Saxon verse are retained, and as much thesis and anacrusis is allowed as is consistent with a regular cadence. Alliteration has been used to a large extent, but it was thought that modern ears would hardly tolerate it on every line. End rhyme has been used occasionally, internal rhyme, sporadically. Both have some warrant in Anglo-Saxon poetry. What Gomer calls the rhyme giver has been studiously kept, viz., the first accented syllable in the second half verse always carries the alliteration, and the last accented syllable alliterates only sporadically. Alternate alliteration is occasionally used as in the original. No 2 accented syllables have been brought together, except occasionally after a caesural pause. Or, scientifically speaking, Sieves's C-type has been avoided as not consonant with the plan of translation. Several of his types, however, constantly occur, for example A and a variant, B and a variant of D. Anacrusis gives further variety to the types used in the translation. The parallelisms of the original have been faithfully preserved. Occasionally, some loss has been sustained, but, on the other hand, again has here and there been made. The effort has been made to give a decided flavor of archaism to the translation. All words not in keeping with the spirit of the poem have been, 9 avoided. Again, though many archaic words have been used, there are none, it is believed, which are not found in standard modern poetry. With these preliminary remarks, it will not be amiss to give an outline of the story of the poem. The story. Hrothgar, king of the Danes or Scyldings, builds a great mead hall, or palace, in which he hopes to feast his liegemen, and to give them presents. The joy of king and retainers is, however, of short duration. Grendel, the monster, is seized with hateful jealousy. He cannot brook the sounds of joyance that reach him down in his fen dwelling near the hall. Oft and anon he goes to the joyous building, bent on direful mischief. Thane after thane is ruthlessly carried off and devoured, while no one is found strong enough and bold enough to cope with the monster. For 12 years he persecutes Hrothgar and his vassals. Over sea, a day's voyage off, Beowulf of the Geats, nephew of Hygelac, king of the Geats, hears of Grendel's doings and of Hrothgar's misery. He resolves to crush the fell monster and relieve the aged king. With 14 chosen companions, he sets sail for Daneland. Reaching that country, he soon persuades Hrothgar of his ability to help him. The hours that elapse before night are spent in beer drinking and conversation. When Hrothgar's bedtime comes, he leaves the hall in charge of Beowulf, telling him that never before has he given to another the absolute wardship of his palace. All retire to rest, Beowulf, as it were, sleeping upon his arms. Grendel comes, the great march-stepper, bearing God's anger. He seizes and kills one of the sleeping warriors. Then he advances towards Beowulf. A fierce and desperate hand-to-hand struggle ensues. No arms are used, both combatants trusting to strength and hand grip. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your time. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to comment below. We would also appreciate any financial support. Any donations would be greatly appreciated. We would also appreciate any likes, comments, and subscriptions. Thanks again.